What it go? Dream Team, it's your boy Neal, back with another reaction video, guys. Here we go with the greatest motor race ever. I believe this is the Bathurst 2014 1000. Before we dive in, make sure you subscribe to the channel, ring the notification bell, get a video a thumbs up so it gets suggested. I'm excited to jump into this. Before we do, if you guys got a favorite video suggestion, you can subscribe to Patreon, drop it in the comment section, or in the description section there's a premium request link. This is a Patreon request from Lindsay. Oh my god!
So a couple of weeks ago, I did something that I'm not normally too comfortable with nowadays. I logged onto Twitter because I was seeking an answer from the minds of racing fans around the world. I was on a quest to find out what was the greatest motor race in the whole history of history. Basically, any race in any category that made you go boo! And because my channel is primarily based around Formula 1, a lot of the answers were indeed
Love Formula 1 races, man. I've been getting into F1 recently. Oh my gosh, bro. Like, it's an absolutely phenomenal sport, bro. Like, getting to watch the highlights of these races, bro. It's incredible. All the details and everything that goes into it. When the overpasses, is that what they're called? Overtaking another car, bro. The skill. And it's like, if you make one little mistake, the driver behind you is going to capitalize on that mistake and you're going to get past. It's incredible. But I'm going to let him go.
Formula 1 Grand Prix. And that's totally fair. There have been some great races in its history. Not a lot, but there have been some. Some others, though, went beyond Formula 1 and offered up events from all over the globe. From IndyCar, to sports cars, to NASCAR, even to MotoGP. Everything was thrown in there, and everything was a good suggestion. Nearly. But there were quite a lot of people suggesting one particular race that was none of those things. And it was one that I wholeheartedly agreed with. It was a story of never giving up, of pure madness, of brilliance. It was a race that went on for 8 hours, with a result that absolutely no one saw coming.
How do you racing for legit 8 hours? My god. The amount of focus that you have to race for 8. How long are races usually? They're not 8 hours, are they? How long are races usually? That can't be 8 hours. Not usually. No. This is
not even
special.
The people who won it. And don't let that 8-hour detail put you off, because this race had everything. So kick back for a moment, because I'm about to tell you the story of the greatest motor race of all time.
Give it to me.
Bathurst at the moment. You can do that on our Facebook page or on our website, 2bs.com.au.
Is that New South Wales?
It's October here in Bathurst, New South Wales, Australia. It's a couple hours outside of Sydney, but it's not really a small town. Sure, there are no large sports franchises here, and ever since the end of the gold rush, this city's main export has been depression. But of course, what makes this place go on is the tourist
city's main export has been depression.
That's based on Walu, although that place is known as something else to legions of people around the world. Mount Panorama. The twists and bends in this place have etched it into the history of motor racing. A cultural icon in Australia, the challenges this place presents make it a favourite amongst drivers, and highly regarded as one of the best racetracks in the world. The trek across the top of the mountain is electric, all the way from the cutting right down to Forest Elbow. The elevation changes are huge, the corners challenging, the speed crazy, and the consequences? Well.
Oh my god. Oh my lord! God!
Alright, so basic gist of things, don't crash it, capiche? Of course, because all of this is a public road, this beast of a racetrack is only available 6 weekends in a year. So whatever events are run here are special. The most special out of the bunch is the Bathurst 1000. The 1000 referring to the kilometers run in the race, and the Bathurst referring to where the track is at.
Oh! Now I get it!
This race always throws up something good, and it's not run with open wheelers or GT cars or stock cars.
They are flying. Because I'm in a long distance relationship. My girl lives like 700 miles. I'm not sure what that is in kilometers, but it usually takes me about 10 hours to get to it. Like 730 miles away. It takes me about 10 hours. So 1,000 kilometers, 8-hour race. That's sick.
Cars or whatever. It's run with these things.
Here comes Ben.
This is the Supercars Championship, and I know what you're thinking. These aren't supercars. And you'd be right, but hey, I'll let you in on a little secret. It's just a name. Skipping over the minor details, however, this touring car series is often regarded as one of the best racing series in the world. And if none of these moments are capturing your interest, then I don't know what is gonna melt your butter, so you may as well just turn off this video and go to another channel. No, hang on, wait.
Do not turn to another channel.
The caliber of driving talent in this field is fierce. This ain't no cakewalk. These slippery, overpowered bastards are ferociously difficult to drive. And to watch them dance around Mount Panorama at full tilt in search of the greatest prize in Australian motor racing is a sight to behold.
That's crazy. Look at that.
What's the format for this race? The Great Race, as they call it? Well, it's simple. The race is set at 161 laps, which amounts to 1,000 kilometers of racing. Normally, this race would take about 6 hours, depending upon whether it rains, whether there is carnage, or if a f***ing tree falls on the track. But 6 hours solo in these cars is considered a form of torture, right up with listening to someone spout Bill Cosby jokes. So for this race specifically, there are 2 drivers assigned to each car. You'd have the main driver, who would drive this car throughout the entire year, and then you'd have the other dude, who would be relishing the one weekend out of the year where he's not driving stunt cars at Movie World. So with 26 cars on the grid, 52 drivers were all about to compete for eternal glory.
So you got 2 drivers for each car? That makes more sense.
On Sunday 12th of October, they were all there on the grid. Well, almost all of them, but you see, one of them is missing.
Oh.
It's at this point where you know that something has gone catastrophically wrong. On Saturday morning practice, the brakes on the number 2 Holden Racing Team Commodore had failed. With Warren Luff at the wheel, he slammed into another car and threw them both into the barriers. The damage to the red machine was substantial, so even though they had a day to repair it, this crash knocked them out of the race before it even began. This was no doubt annoying to the car's main driver, Garth Tander. Tander had won this race previously 3 times, but he also knows what this mountain is like when it doesn't like you back. But hey, at least the other car would not be starting the race either, right? Well, you would think that, but that car belonged to the Red Bull Racing crew, and they are the benchmark of the field. And it is just as well they repaired it, because that was the 888 car, which was driven by arguably the most popular man on the grid, the one and only Craig Lowndes. Lowndes is a legend of Australian motorsport, and from 1996 to 2018, he won this race 7 times, and would twice win it with Stephen Richards, who he just so happened to be partnering up with that weekend. They were one of the favourites heading into the weekend, but probably not the favourite. Instead, the favourite was probably the man in the other Red Bull car, the number 1 car, the defending Supercars champion, Jamie Whincup.
Dang, you got some Red Bull really be running F1 with Verstappen and Perez, and they be running Australian motorsport too, Bathurst. They be running that too.
Dude was meticulous. He was dominant. Perhaps more fittingly, he was just f***ing fast. Whincup was on course to win the Supercars Championship for the 6th time, and was already a 4-time winner of the Bathurst 1000, last winning it with Paul Dumbrell, and they would pair up again to win it all this weekend. They would be doing it the hard way though, since Whincup made the noble mistake of crashing out in qualifying. This on-the-go automotive plastic surgery brought out the red flag, and his best time was deleted. And because he couldn't set another time, it put him right down to the back of the grid. But of course, that's no biggie. You don't have to be first in qualifying to win this race. And he wasn't the only one to butcher his qualifying either. The number 55 car of David Reynolds and resident Lord Voldemort, Dean Canto, had also crashed in
Resident Lord Voldemort
qualifying. And behind both of them, stone motherless last, was the number 6 car of Chaz Mostert and Paul Morris. Now, while Reynolds and Canto were a dark horse for this race, Mostert and Morris kinda weren't, because it was a bit of a weird combo. Mostert was fast, but Morris was on the way out. No one really gave him a chance, so we're not going to talk about them anymore. For the time being. Up the front, meanwhile, sat Shane van Gisbergen. Just the day prior, he set a lap time that was miles faster than anyone else in the top 10 qualifying shootout that is forever a highlight of the Bathurst weekend, where 10 drivers go for broke in front of 200,000 wasted Holden and Ford fans on what this weekend ought to be dubbed Bogan Christmas. Despite looking like a 6'4" farmer, Shane van Gisbergen is one of the best drivers in the entire world, and that is in no way an exaggeration. Put him in anything, and he will make it dance. But all that was just qualifying. The race lay ahead, and it was the race that mattered. The guy sitting next to him in the Ford Falcon, he knows all about it, because he started second last year as well, and then he went on to win the race. He knew how to win this race, because this guy was Mark Winterbottom. Yeah, that is his name. But once the lights went out and the race started, we were thrown a bit of a curveball.
What happened?
Both these guys got burnt off the line by the Volvo of Scott McLaughlin. The thought of a Volvo burning a Chevy or a Ford off the line is laughable, but this thing, with current IndyCar ace Scotty Mack at the wheel, was a goddamn rocket that year. It was an amazing start, as it was too for Jamie Whincup, who was hustling that #1 car up the field. Get out of the way, peasants! I am the champion! I am the— whoa, wait. Did he just jump the start? I mean,
Yes,
Mans was
bro.
leading the grid before the other guys had their hands off their junk. Well, the stewards thought so too. His start was under investigation while he ran around for a few laps, picking people off one by one. A few laps went by and then the decision came down. That start was legit. He just so happened to time it absolutely perfectly. But of course, everything—
To time it that perfectly is sick, bro. Shout out to him, because there's no better way to time it any more perfect.
a Red Bull car does is sus, am I right? So the race went on, and throughout the pack, there were some great battles going on. It might be 161 laps, but all those laps are hard fought for. You have got to position yourself absolutely perfectly for whatever circumstance may come around the corner. This is Bathurst after all, and it didn't take long before it started to throw up some weird stuff. The first victim, the number 14, Holden Commodore. These guys were having a ball earlier this weekend, with provisional pole position for Fabian Coulthard and a potential hair solution for Luke Yordan. But this being Bathurst, it put up a fight. On lap 25, Yordan threw his car into the sandbox and brought out the safety car, or pace car for all you North American lovelies. He went down a lap, but the mountain wasn't quite finished with them yet, as they were about to encounter one of the most vicious obstacles that this place can throw at you. It was, of course, skipping.
Kangaroo.
The fight bout of Holden versus Rue resulted in a disqualification against the Holden by virtue of the fact that it kinda killed its opponent. But I mean, hey, chill, don't feel too bad for the Rue. They got like 1,000 of these things in the back. And hey, at least he did go down swinging, because it did damage the car, forcing them into the pit lane and out of contention. And
my man took out a whole kangaroo, bro. Like, and you can't stop. Like, you just gotta keep driving. Like, no, you hit a kangaroo. That gotta keep going.
let down. This brought out the pace car again, and then more weird happened.
Oh.
It wasn't bad enough they started from last, but Paul the Dude Morris decided to destroy their race here by slamming into the wall at turn 2. It sucks really for the car's main driver, Chaz Mostert, a dude who is proving to be stupidly fast and one of the best young talents in Australia today. He had already become something of a cult hero through being able to win in what was pretty much his first ever race in a V8 supercar last year. Here he is today, in 2014, with the factory Ford team as one of the fastest drivers on the grid. Meanwhile, his teammate was one of the slowest drivers around today, despite having a long and
how did they get teamed up? If he was one of the slowest around and the other guy one of the fast, why would they put them together?
Successful career and being handy behind the wheel before the advent of color TV. It had been a long time since he had tasted success at this level, and here he was, stuck in the wall in his last attempt at the race, and just completely killed their chances. To be fair though, it wasn't all down to him, because at that corner, this was happening. The track was being torn up by the cars, and by the heat that day, because, I mean, this is Australia after all. But then things got weirder, because for some ungodly reason, while still under safety car conditions, Dale Wood in the number 21 car was now stopped at the top of the mountain with the car that was about 3 yards shorter than what it started out as. Must have been a big ass kangaroo to pull that stuff, unless it wasn't a kangaroo. Maybe he had done something stupid like, I don't know, slam into the back of his own teammate? Needless to say, this threw him out of the race, leaving him stranded at the top of the mountain amongst some of the more interesting folk of supercars lore. Elsewhere on the circuit, the medical car heard this and shed its lights as a mark of respect, or maybe as an act of protest for what was to lay ahead. The race got back underway and we were up and running, but not for long.
No way.
For the second time today, the 360 Nissan was buried in the wall at turn 2. Yeah, I said the second time. The first time it happened was 30 laps ago, when Cam Waters went into the corner and thought, nah, you could take an early shower, mate. That had already damaged their car badly, and now they'd done it all over again. Of course, it sucked for the car's regular driver, James Moffat, but
Dang, so I'm guessing the regular driver, okay, so I'm assuming that they usually close out the race. The alternate driver, I guess, or the worst one out of the two starts out the race, and then the better driver closes out the race. These cars dropping like flies. These cars are driving like flies.
It also sucked for the person in the car at the time, Taz Douglas. He was a quick dude, but could just never land a seat in the sport, and had just recovered from Burkitt lymphoma a couple of years prior. This just added another shattered dream for him, and with the damage to the car, that was pretty much game over. Ditto too for Scott Pye, who decided to tear half his car off, going through turn 2. The pace car was out again, which gave ample time for them to repair their cars, sort of, and to clean the racetrack too, where it seemed as though they either drafted in Chase Carey or the bastard love child of Lee Marvin and a bottle of Jack Daniels to pick bits of Datsun off the track. By now, however, it was clear that the surface of the track which was causing these accidents was bad, like 1984 Dallas Grand Prix bad. So they had a choice. They could just let the drivers soldier on and just deal with it, like real drivers and all that other macho bull. Or they could do what they eventually elected to do and stop the race. This was only the third time in the history of Bathurst that the race had been red flagged. Although, unlike the first 2 times, this race would get underway again. But this business of repairing the road would not be a quick fix. It would be over an hour before all this would be resolved. In which time, the team set to work on repairing their cars, modifying the cars, doing some taping and other mafia.
Hey, that helps out a lot of these cars that's been flying into these walls, right? That helps him out big time to be able to spend that much time repairing the cars and working on them. And
things to their cars, all while the clock ticked away so that they would be ready for the restart. Eventually, the quick solution was done, the pace car set off, and the race was about to resume. Sure, the order was jumbled up thanks to pit stops and lap cars and other bits of witchcraft, but the race would get back underway for about 3 seconds.
no,
Oh, problem for Stephen Johnson rotated now. Could this day get any worse?
Get any worse? Nah, not for him. He was out of the race. That's about as bad as you can get. For some others though, it could get worse. Take the number 1 of Jamie Whincup for example. Sure, the opening laps were unbelievable. Some of the best drives that this mountain had ever seen. But then his mind went blah blah and cannoned into the side of Todd Kelly's Nissan and would send him to the pit lane with damage. All of this put Whincup a lap down. The only cream of comfort they had was that they knew there would be another pace car, and that when that happened, they were gonna get their lap back. So no real panic, but they were going to require some luck.
Oh, black flag car 1.
Well, that doesn't help. Meanwhile, up the front, the likes of McLaughlin and Van Gisbergen are establishing themselves as the favourites. But some others were doing well. Voldemort was doing a steering job in the Bottle Falcon, and the number 5 entrant of Winterbottom and Steve Owen is keeping touch, as was the Triple 8 of Craig Lowndes. The Triple 2 of Nick Percat and Oliver Gavin are doing good too, way out driving the machinery they were in. The number 16 car of Scott Pye and Ash Walsh was somehow keeping in there, with a car that was held together with sticky tape and the mortgages of half the crew. And 1 lap later, there was even
sticky tape in the board. It's just some half the crew.
more missing off the car.
God. Oh my
I'm
Jesus,
no mechanic,
bro.
but I don't think a car is meant to look like that. And after having
that's
happened
it.
at a part of the track where
That's
the cars
it.
reached 300 kilometers an hour, Mr. Pye almost certainly his undercrackers. But with the stricken car laying on the side of the track, guess what that meant? Yes,
car.
Dora the Explorer. Another safety car. Is this the norm at Bathurst? You bet it is. This track has absolutely no mercy whatsoever. Is it the norm to drift this close to the wall and emerge unharmed? I mean, not quite, but it was too cool not to put in this video. Up the front, the 33 kept on battling the 97. Both are now being driven by the co-drivers, but they are still playing for keeps. The racing is spectacular, because in a place like this, it always is. The Bottle entry of Reynolds and Canto were in a great position via strategy, probably the best of them all. The last thing they needed was another safety car. But that's exactly what they would get.
Dang. Sheesh,
Well, that's
man.
not ideal. Of course, we got back underway again, and for a while, not much happened up front, but behind, a lot was happening. Remember that number 14 car that hit a kangaroo and went for a trip to the
Yes.
beach? They were back on the lead lap. Remember that 360 Nissan who hit the wall twice? They're back on the lead lap.
Oh
Remember
my
Jamie Whincup and the number 1 Red Bull Commodore who went through hell and creation despite his unbelievable driving? He was back on the lead lap. The number 6 of Chaz Mostert was also up there. Somehow. It seems that anyone whose race was over 3 laps ago was back in the game. That's how this race be sometimes. That's why it's so great. The teams began to settle into the groove. The strategies were starting to play out, and now they were about to bring their drivers in for the final push to the line. Everyone knew there was going to be another safety car, although nobody quite knew when. Although the Volvo of Robert Dahlgren made it quite easy to guess when he slammed into the wall and ended their race. The pit stops were still on though. It is the logical thing to do in that moment. It was still a complete free-for-all as to what was going to happen for the last 40 laps. Although, unfortunately for some, they wouldn't even see that out. In the cruelest twist of fortune, the Bottle Falcon ground to a halt when the alternator decided not to alternate stuff anymore. After being favourites on strategy, they were out. Over electricity. That's the thing about this race. Every year there will be favourites, but a lot of the time they'll end up on the side of the road, or in a wall, or back in the garage. But you never quite know when it will happen, or who to. You just gotta keep digging. Try your luck. Hope you can make it to the end. Nothing is guaranteed here. It ain't over till it's over. You just got.
You know what I'm saying? It's a lot of skill, a lot of will, but you need a little bit of luck. Just a little bit of luck.
Gotta stay out of trouble, because eventually, at this place, it's gonna find you.
God dang it. God dang it.
After dominating the race early on, Scott McLaughlin crashed into the wall with 40 laps to go, running wide onto the marbles and crashing into the same place that his teammate did. He was out there because Shane van Gisbergen was beginning to charge, and when the race resumed after safety car 509, he continued to do so. He was passing with authority, and it seemed that now he was odds-on favourite to win. There was still quite a lot to play out, but he was a freaking rocket out there. He climbed past all of them and was now leading the race. Down the pack meanwhile, everything was happening. There were drivers being told to save fuel. There were drivers being told to go for broke. There was jostling for position everywhere, and everyone wanted a shot. There was still one more pit stop left for everyone, pace car or not. Paul Dumbrell almost binned car number 1, and James Moffat almost minced car 360 as well. The battle was heating up, and everyone wanted a piece, although some people were perhaps a little bit too vigorous.
His best time. Look at this up the inside. This is
Oh my God!
massive shunt at turn
Dear Lord!
2 again.
Okay, that was too much of a scent. Maz was trying to pass from Auckland, New Zealand from back there. The marshals attended to the number 4 Mercedes of Lee Holtzworth, whilst Russell Ingall, the man who sent it,
Go! No, please let me go!
surprise, surprise, the pace car was out again. The drivability of a car on its roof not being too great. It came in again before going out again with 13 laps to go when the 23 car was once again found itself parked on the side of the road. What this meant was that the final round of pit stops were about to be dealt. This was it, the final push to the line. However, not everyone came in for the pit stop. Some did stay out. However, the leader of the race, Shane van Gisbergen, did come into the pit lane. It was a standard pit stop, fill it up with fuel and you'll be good to the finish. But of course, there were a lot of pit stops in this race. There is a reason why I brought this one up. When you stall in one of these things, normally you just start the thing up again and roar away. But for Shane, his starter motor had failed, and it wouldn't be repaired again for another 10 minutes, by which time he had been thrown 3 laps down and out of the race. Another favourite.
Dang, bro. This is crazy.
For the race, gone. And
He was
again,
killing.
over electricity. For those that had survived, for now, it was getting interesting. When the race resumed, it was Winterbottom leading Whincup. But how the hell did that happen? Wasn't Whincup leading Winter? Oh, I see. Well, that was freaking random. And a complete bottle job. This ain't no time for beach shenanigans, you freaking melt. Actually, now's a good time to talk about these two guys. Not only did they not make a pit stop, but for a while now, they had been intense rivals. They battled for victory last year. They locked horns at stages this year. And now here they are, 8 laps from the end, and eternal glory at stake. They were now ahead of Lowndes and Mostert, both of whom did make a pit stop. But pit stop or not, they were all racing hard. Everywhere they would go, they would be right out sideways. There was everything to play for, and heading into the last corner on that lap, Whincup dived down the inside and took the lead from Winterbottom. There's absolutely nothing in it. Any one of these guys can win, just so long as they can keep themselves composed.
Oh my God!
They did not. The spin ruined the race for Winterbottom and Lowndes. Frosty went down the pack and began to conserve fuel just to make it to the line, whilst Lowndes received a drive-through penalty for trying to send Frosty into the Shadow Realm. 2 more crowd favourites taken out of the race in the blink of an eye, which meant that up front, it was Whincup leading from Mostert. And the fact that this was happening was nothing short of incredible. These 2 guys had started the race from the very back of the grid. One had been in the wall, one had been a lap down, and yet here they were, battling for victory. Or at least it seemed that way. Whincup began to edge out a bit of a gap, because, I mean, he is the class of the field. It was kind of like watching Max Verstappen nowadays, watching a Red Bull car shrink
Verstappen's a monster.
into the distance, and knowing that there was little hope in pursuing them. With 3 laps to go, they were home and dry. Whincup and Dumbrell were almost a lock for Bathurst glory in 2014. And then a question began to emerge. How much fuel does he have?
Yeah, because they didn't go in for the pit stop, but the guy behind him did. Oh,
Still
shoot.
pushing like hell, but his crew kept on repeating the same message over and over again. Save fuel. The problem for him was that while they were telling him to save fuel, Mostert was not saving fuel. He didn't need to. They made that pit stop. They were good. Whincup did not. And Mozzie was starting to draw closer and closer and closer. Whincup continued to ignore calls from the pits, begging him to save fuel. They relayed to him that with this pace, they were not going to make it to the finish. With a lap and a half left, Whincup only had 1 lap of fuel left, and the gap was getting visibly narrower.
A lap and a half left. You have 1 lap of fuel left. God, how is this gonna play out? There's no way they win. There's no way they can win. There's no way.
When they started lap 161, Mostert was right there.
It's over.
The last lap, the 8th hour of the Bathurst 1000, and this is what it came down to. The kid versus the goat. There is no greater challenge, but he didn't care. A win was right there for the taking, and he was all over the reigning champion. Up and down the mountain, he looked everywhere he could, while Whincup desperately tried to save as much fuel as he could. The crowd were on their feet and on edge. Holden versus Ford, the age-old rivalry. Heading down the hill, Mostert only needed 1 chance.
And they got it, huh? Did he get it? They got it. Oh my God, bro! Oh, it's over. That's insane.
What a drive. What a f***ing drive. This was a race for the ages. For Mostert, it was one of the great Bathurst drives. And for Paul Morris, to win on his 22nd and last attempt at the great race, to win it all was a complete fairy tale.
That's
They
crazy.
crossed the line to win the 2014 Bathurst 1000. And wow, what? Is that the 360 Nissan finishing in 2nd place?
Did the other team run out of fuel? They didn't have enough fuel to make it to the finish line. Bro, that's crazy. My how?
The car that got whacked twice and went down a lap, they finished 2nd? Yes, they did. Thanks to Whincup completely running out of fuel before the end of the lap. He lost positions to the 360 Nissan, the 222 Holden, and the number 9 Mercedes. Whincup crossed the line to take position 5, although that was little consolation for his co-driver.
I think they had. I mean, he had to drive the way he did though, because if he was going for first, bro, like he couldn't save fuel because they was on his butt. They was on his butt, bro. He had to go all out and take that risk. It didn't work out, but I mean, I can't be mad at him because like if he tries to conserve fuel and then he gets passed earlier and he still loses either way.
But for however much he was mocked for this, the reality was this. Had he saved enough to make it to the end, he likely wouldn't have won anyway. By doing this, at least they had a fighting chance. There's a term they have for that. It's, racing. And ultimately, this race had that in spades. To come from last on the grid, to be buried in the tyre wall, to then drag their car back into contention, to compete against and beat the best in the business in what is the great race, is something almost out of a Hollywood script. For Chaz Mostert, it brought about the arrival of a truly amazing talent. For Paul Morris, it was a fitting end to it all. After 22 years of pain, he finally got his dub on his final attempt at the mountain. They only led 1 lap, but it was the one that counted most. And then you think about the story of Moffat and Douglas, buried in the wall twice, yet never gave up. And they finished 2nd despite missing half their car. And the 222 of Nick Percat and Oliver Gavin to finish 3rd in that machinery was stellar as well. It's hard to put this race into words really, because it kind of had everything. I mean, this is racing. This is stuff we love to see. In my humble up opinion, this is, without question or shadow of doubt, the greatest motor race of all time. Or at the very least, it was better than Spa 2021. That's a low freaking bar.
That was insane, bro. That was absolutely insane, man. Sheesh, that's awesome, though. that seemed like such an amazing race. You had cars dropping like flies. You got fuel teams pitting, teams not pitting. They trying to make it to the end. Everybody's running into the wall. Oh my gosh, so many safety cars that came out. The pit stops. You got electricity issues, alternator issues. Bro, this race is insane. You need the skill, you need the will, and you need a little bit of luck on your side. And the fact that Cinderella story, the kid and the guy, you know what I'm saying? The kid who was rising to stardom, and the guy that was on his way out, who hadn't tasted victory in so long, for them to come together and win it all. That's awesome. That's all we got. You guys got a favorite video suggestion? You can subscribe to Patreon or drop it in the comment section. It's your boy DTN. Out.